check. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. 727. Checking out a few things on the studio. I appreciate that. Guys, what we're going to do is go live. Hello, Rana. Hey, Hancock Garden. Hey, Cajun Cracker. We haven't went live in a long time, and so I thought we would, guys, because what I want to do is a question and answer, because we can talk about so many different things, and sometimes I just kind of get hung up on, what you guys want to talk about. And so I'd like for you to come into the comment section there and give me, or just ask any questions on any topics, guys, whether it's from BP Earthwatch, or if we switch over to the Sumerian History channel there, it doesn't matter. But I wanted to do a live stream, welcome everyone in, and again, take your questions, because I study a lot. I do a lot of different things and look at details, and sometimes I bog down. You can't see the forest from the trees. So I want to back that up a little bit. And guys, just come on in. I appreciate it. And let me know or ask any questions about either the Sumerian History channel, BP Earthwatch, or just anything. I just wanted to come in live and say hello and talk with you guys for a moment. $720, 7275. No, I don't know about Chabad Lubavitch. Tell us what you know. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Langley, British Columbia. Hey, Anna, how you doing? Hey, Anna B. Hoover Dam. Again, this is question and answer night. Wanted to do it, just didn't know exactly when I would have time. What you're looking at is our secondary channel called the Sumerian History channel. We have maybe 10 videos there, and a lot of you have watched them. If you have questions about those or any of the Bible videos we talked about on BP Earthwatch, or the Lake Mead, Lake Powell information, just throw it at me. Let's go from here. If we live in the southern states, maybe you shouldn't. Well, maybe not. Critical thinking. Where do you live? Penguin Blue, Sitha, excuse me. How about the Philippines picked up world's largest AI data center called Silica? I haven't heard about that, but I do know that there's a lot of competition in smaller companies like Japan that have a lot less data centers than we do, and they don't need any more. They're more efficient, and I saw some new chips are coming out now that it's going to compete with NVIDIA. So I'm not sure, but I do know that it seems the U.S. has used up way too many resources on getting the amount of data that we have now. Hey, sister from Northern California. Hello, John. Idaho in the house. Kathy, critical thinking. Again, Carol, all of you guys, thank you for coming in. This was just kind of off the sleeve, off the cuff, and 8 p.m. question and answer. So guys, fire away. I'm checking out what's going on here. Ra, England. Hello, Ra. Very dry in Florida, no rain. It's garage time. We've had a few critical drinking. We've had a few dry spells. All of you guys, thank you for coming. But we have not had long-term ones. We are kind of in that section of the country where you're seeing the moisture from the west be squeezed right into a corridor over us in Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, through that area. But it's a very narrow path. So we've been very fortunate this year on rains that we've gotten in the last couple of days, and it has helped definitely with the temperature. Again, hey, Anna. Hey, Dragon Rider. Seth M. Venom. N. M. Venom. John Keller again. Hey, John. Francis Palm. Sister G. HB John. Glad to see you guys here. Throw some questions at me. I know most of you watch the videos, and I'm sure you do have some questions. Let's see. It's just COVID. I said, Science Alert just said today there's no place on earth is safe if all hell breaks loose. You know, that's right. And that's why, we got to be prepared for what happens on the other side of this physical life. BP, did you notice the big star in the west, bright when the sun goes down, sets an hour after the sun? What is it? I've been watching it for 14 years, gets closer, does not orbit per sun. Let's see, in the west, guys, I guess at this time of year, would that be Venus? Someone let me know. I'm not sure. I haven't stepped outside and looked tonight. Hey, Mama Bear. Are we looking at, you got the morning star and the evening star. They're both the same depending on the time of the year. Now, Stephen, that's a very good question. Where is a good place to see the Sumerian tablets with a correct translation into English? Well, it depends on how correct you want to call them, but there's 2 or 3. And unfortunately, you have different groups of people that translate in each one. And anytime you have humans translating the data, you have sometimes bias put into that equation. But I will find those guys, and I'll find them in a few minutes and put a link here. But what I do on our Sumerian History channel is I try to dive into all of that and all the ancient books, how they relate to each other, going from the ancient Sumerians all the way up to modern Christianity, because it's all interconnected. Carol Reeling, hey Anna. Carol really wants to know if the Anunnaki are coming back. Well, that's kind of a difficult question, because what if they never left? We're dealing with 2 groups. If you look at the ancient Sumerian group, you had the kings list, and they all had long lives, 28,000, 30-something thousand years. And by the way, I did a little bit of detailed dive last night and this morning about that Sumerian kings list. Guys, do you know it matches the ages of some of the groups in the Old Testament? When you look at how they changed the math up and how that matches, very interesting there. But as far as the Anunnaki coming back, what I've been looking at, to be honest with you, is the amount of Navy information and the videos that they're showing of these USO objects. In other words, they can fly in the water and they can fly above up in the air, called transmedium. And we remember the video I did with showing the attack on the craft coming through the Yemeni waters, and that a Hellfire missile bounced off of that object and 3 more came out from under it. The Hellfire didn't explode, and it was like, it was a force field, but it was like 2 magnets of opposite polarity. You just couldn't quite push them together. But that has been reported several times, and nobody on the planet has said or could say what nation has that technology. And even in that Washington, D.C. hearing that we saw on the USOs and the UFOs, every one of the panel members said no one on this planet has the technology of the USOs. We've seen them, the Navy, take the images coming over the ship and then diving into the water. The USS Nimitz has a report on that. And actually, it goes back into history, back even into the days of, a couple hundred years ago, when sea captains' logs were like the Bible. They had to write it down accurately, get it back to the king or whoever, and those details were very important. But they reported the same things. So to me, if you remember the Sumerian history, when the flood came, Enlil and his group lifted off like birds as the floods came in. Enki and his group retreated to the deep waters of the Abzu. And then again, Enlil's group they relit on the earth. They looked down, and they actually were sad because it was much quieter than they expected. Because remember, Enlil said it was too noisy. We're going to flood the earth. He didn't really flood it. He was just like the Mayan kings and leaders. They knew the cycles of time, and what he did, he knew that the Younger Dryas was coming. It was into that 13,000 year period. He didn't prophesy it. I guess he kind of did, but he didn't cause it. Let me say it that way. Anyway, neither one of those factions really left. And both Enlil and Enki and that group were not of the king's list. They were immoral beings according to the history. And so the only group that has the technology for the USOs, according to what I see, what all the US delegates are saying, the UFO specialists, the military specialists, again, is they don't have the technology. So the only technology that has been proven that does that is what's called the Stag of the Abzu, guys. That's one of the videos in this Sumerian History channel. Very interesting. I'm going to pull up one of the images of it in just a moment, but the Stag of the Abzu was a vehicle created by Enki. It could travel over the marsh at high speeds. It could dive deep into the oceans. It could travel in the air. Very advanced technology. And that ability, guys, goes on to India. They had the Vimanas. They could fly almost every civilization had what they call gods that came from heaven or came down from heaven or could fly. They're all symbolized with the wings and the craft and all of that. But what I think we're seeing as far as the Anunnaki is they never left. And now we're seeing more advanced reports, more of them coming in. The further we get into this new cycle that started December 21st, 2012, called the 14th cycle, the more reports are coming in of these USO craft. And to me, what it says, now I may be crazy, is that if you remember before the flood in the Sumerian tales, Enlil and his group, which Enki was included in that, what they call a divine council, they said, the flood is coming. The people that we created are too noisy. Now, y'all all are going to have to swear, and this was Enlil. You too, Enki, you got to swear you're not going to tell anybody about the flood. We've got to wipe this thing clean. It's got to be a clean slate. And so Enki agreed. And that's why he bypassed that agreement by whispering through the reed wall to the fellow that built the real ark. Told him the flood was coming, how to build it. I think he actually said something like, tear your house down and build this boat. But the fact that he did not disobey the council by directly telling any human what was going on, he got the message across. Now, what had happened was the rivers had begun to be depleted. The water resources, the food resources were being taken out. And it was very concerning. Enlil wanted to end mankind. Enki, because he created that generation of humans, did not want to end it. But again, I don't think they ever left, and I think we're going to see that group reemerge as the real disclosure. Why they won't go ahead and just give us a date is because they're afraid to. They don't know how we will react. They have no control over the situation, and it may not be a date given by the U.S. government. It may just happen. But again, Inky came in when the waters were depleted, when all resources were down, and he regenerated the very low level waters, like we talk about the deep aquifers of the Abzu and of all the oceans, reactivated those. And that's why you see when he's depicted, it's like a river going over him with fish jumping through it. He replenished the waters. Is that what we're seeing now? We know that the Antarctic broke record temperatures during its winter this year, 36 degrees plus Fahrenheit. That is, and at the same time, the North Pole is heating. That is not a normal situation. So if there was a trigger to any of the watchers or whoever we're dealing with, that would be it. The Earth again is going into this cycle to where it's going to shake off a lot of human beings. But in every flood, that has happened. Just a few survived. And most of the ones that survived were chosen. You get on the boat, or you do this, or you get into the Veres that were built at Darenkuyu. But that's what I think. I think they never left. They're still here. And why would they want to deal with this madness of mankind as it is now? But I think Inky knows what's going on with this group, and that is who is the only civilization ever on this planet that has the technology that the U.S. Navy is showing us. Hey, Francis Palmer. Jesse, what do you think of the detailed pictures of Jesus' face taken from the Turin shroud that they have made? I think it was the whole thing was a fake, the whole thing. And they said, no, we've already did blood tests. We've done all that. Where did you get the blood from? And they say, well, it fell through the rocks at Golgotha, at the place of the skull. Come on, please, really? It was clean. Remember, the linens were folded and clean when they opened that door and Christ wasn't there. There was no shroud with blood on it. I think it's another man-made thing, and Christ at that point would have only been 33 years in that present form. And that shroud, the picture on there looks much older than that. And I just, again, when he was entombed, and they came and rolled that stone back, or the angels did, and the ladies found him, there was no blood. There was no shroud there. It was clean, folded white linen. So I just don't, I don't go along with that shroud. But what is important to me is not that at all. It's that you realize Christ is your Savior. But there's things, they discovered the ark and they've done all of this, and they really haven't found anything yet. And what has happened is people get to looking for things on the outside when it's really on the inside. But that's what I think about that. Let's see. Sue B., I've heard about creatures underground that we will see them and they will scare us to death. Well, are you talking about, Sue, like when they open up the pit and the locust army? Is that what you're talking about? Let me know. That's right, critical. It was pulse melts from the ice shift. And that was it. That tells you that the Sumerian text in that period of time was at least 13,000 years old. But remember, was it yesterday they just found out the Great Pyramid is 23,000 years old, guys? And that, that pit fits in perfectly because you got 26,000 years on a full cycle, 13,000 on a half cycle. And so that would put the pyramids in that timeline beginning at the beginning of this full 26,000 year cycle. That ended on December 21st, 2012. And a lot of people said, well, the earth didn't end. It didn't, but the cycles changed. And that was the year that the Arctic started to melt rapidly. 2012, in just 2 months after that, it was starting to melt. Still, it's worse than that now. Now, let's see. There are creatures deep in the ocean. This is from Patty Patton Brooks. There are creatures deep in the ocean I researched in an AI colossal squid that has claws like tigers. Now, I wouldn't doubt that at all, because the ocean is so deep. The deepest part is what the Puerto Rican Trench, and they find new things there all the time. And they found giant squid, guys, over in Baja in that area. But we have the ocean is 75% of the earth, and we barely explored it at all. So I doubt very seriously that if there's not more creatures like that now. Now, critical thinking said, people think, or they talk about why these structures were made with huge stones. They had, they had sloths the size of cars. Just one megafauna was out of control 20K years ago and older. True, the stones would have been very hard to move, and it would have taken quite a bit. Some people talk about they may have had some form of levitation, things like that. I've seen reports that those stones were even liquefied and poured in place. But again, I'm not sure about that. But again, I do believe that they are at least 23,000 years old. At least they said the Great Pyramid was. And the way that they figured that date was they looked at the marks of the rain over those thousands of years, how it would wear on the rocks, and dated it back to that time. Now, of course, Wikipedia and mainstream scientists say, what do we got? 4,500 years or something like that, and maybe 6,000 going back to the pyramids. Guys, when that never made sense, ever. But especially when you look at the flooding at the Younger Dryas, when that pulse melt happened, the time that Enlil and them were lifting off from the flood, and it matches all the other flood stories too. But that would have been the middle of that cycle. Francis, that's a very interesting question. How many advanced civilizations have come and gone over the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth? That would be hard to tell because we don't have that history before us. There's, as far as finding the archaeology and things like that, the bones or skeletons or things that could show that. But it's much older than what we talk about. Let me say this. We talked about this 13,000 year period, but there's more than likely many civilizations back before that time, because if you look even in the book of Genesis, it says that the earth was not created shapeless and void and without form. It says it became void. And then we start seeing the story of Genesis pile back in there and rebuild a new civilization. But it definitely tells you there was a world before this. The Mayan, I think, to them this is the fourth cycle. Hopi, something like that too. So what I've found out, guys, is there was one religion and one civilization to begin with. Every religion since then has been taken from those original sources and manipulated to fit whatever priesthood or Roman church or whatever narrative they wanted to present to the world. That their God was the most powerful, whatever it was. But there's people in the Sumerian text, like Enoch. Think about what I'm telling you now. And he is one of the few that has no lineage. And the first two letters of his name is E-N, just like E-N for Enlil or Enki, which means Lord. So it was Lord Ak. His name was not Enoch. It was Lord Nok. He did not have parents. He had no lineage. He was taken up into heaven. He was shown things that most men never see. He was handed documents and rules to hand back down to the Beni Elohim that had been sentenced to death. But there's been many civilizations. And again, looking at our oldest data up to our brand new text, it is one history, one world, one group of people. And again, you saw the different religions move through different wars. You saw Constantine change things. We saw the Greeks change it. We saw the Hebrews change things to fit their narrative. But it's been really, and what I've noticed is, if you think about it, most of us, and I've done it for most of my life, thought about these different civilizations, and they had different gods, and they had different people involved in different groups, but it was only that they changed the name. It is one history, guys. And so that's why I love to go back to the first tablets, the Sumerian history tablets, because everything past that point, including some of the books of the Bible that were taken out because it was just too much. They couldn't control the masses with that much information. They wanted you to have to come to church, bow down, pray, and put money in that plate in order to be saved. Without that control, they were pretty much useless. But it's been one group, one story. Then that story, if you can go to the very beginning and understand what they did then, everything else falls in place. You'll see how people copy the flood story and all of the others. And Enoch, the book that was taken out, guys, is actually another character. His name was Enlil. He was one of the group with Enlil and Enki. He has all the same exact characteristics of Enoch. He was chosen. He was taken up to the grand council of the gods. He was given instructions. He was the seventh son, just like Enoch. Enlil, look it up, guys. There's one of the videos in here that you're looking at. If you scroll down, you'll probably see one that says Enoch, Enlil, and Enlil. But again, nothing has changed except man has changed it. And the reason Christ came back when he did was to correct the changes. He said, there's no God in that temple you're worshiping down there. our creator, is still in his heavenly seat. Those 70 Beni Elohim, the sons of God, were condemned. Their immortality was stripped because they came to earth and fell. They wanted to be gods. They wanted to take women for themselves. That didn't work out, and it didn't. It worked out really well for you and I, because what it did was clear the smoke. It cleared the fog. Now we know we go through Jesus Christ to the Creator. El Elyon is his name. That was what he was called in Genesis until the Hebrews transferred their God's name over to his and called them both Lord. And because they knew that their God had been condemned to death, God told all 70 of them, El Elyon, he said, you will now die like mortal men, like the kings, because of what you've done to your 70 locations I appointed to you on this planet, and you blew it. And that was a message that Enoch, let's go back to Enlil, was given in heaven. And they talk about Enoch coming back and telling this group, you're in trouble, you messed up. And they pleaded for him to please ask God to give them a break. That was out of the question. They had already basically polluted the planet, inbred all the things, wars, everything. And the worst thing was that they claimed to be gods. And they were all condemned to die. That's why when Christ rent that temple curtain, that veil, it was empty. He was showing them that long ago, guys, this was over. That game was over with. Now I'm back. I'm in charge. What does Emmanuel mean? God with us. The lesser gods had been put into to charge. One of them that they call Yahweh was assigned Israel and the people, called territorial gods. There were 70. There was also 70 guys in different areas and lesser gods in the Sumerian history. And this group of the kings list, I mentioned that, guys, match some of these 70 Beni Elohim very well. And what happened before the kings list, that group wasn't really put on the calendar, but their deaths were recorded in that kings list, except for Enmenduranki, Enoch. His never was because he didn't die. And there's so much there, guys. I just want to back out. Thank you, Pink Guitar, for that $4.99. Thank you very much. Because I really do want to answer your questions. I've studied it a long time and can tell you the stories for hours, but that's not what this is about. Rachel, my shed is 10 feet from the house. A red object bounced to and from our sky in Arizona. Didn't see anything with my eyes, but security camera took 5 videos of it. Is this the red dwarf in our solar system? I don't know. I didn't see it. It's hard for me to say. I don't know, Rachel. I don't know. I would have to have something to look at, and if you in our community page, you may, if you have a video, you can put it there, and we can all analyze it. Rachel, was going from southeast to northeast, westish. Rachel, again, listen, I know there's objects out there, and as a matter of fact, I know that there's transmedium objects out there because I have met 16 of them. That's why I'm so eminent about what I'm telling you guys. 16 of them. Of these transmedian objects came right over me. And I saw them full color. It wasn't grainy images of this beautiful bronze glow from the bottom of the holes, no lights, just a glow. 16 of them weaving in and out of the airspace right over me, 100 feet. They were probably 50 or 60 feet wide. As they came over me, moved over I-10 at Phoenix, over the Gila River, and over the Estrella Mountains at the Phoenix International Speedway. What is so unique about that story, guys, is this was 2013. It wasn't the Phoenix Lights. This was way after that. It's what I call the second Phoenix Lights. But I had been doing videos about the Sumerian stories for about 3 months on YouTube. On the original channel, it had about 400,000 subs or something like that. For 3 months, I'd done just a whole series of Sumerian videos. And that entire time I was telling, if any of you guys remember, that I'm going to go to 2 places when I leave Mississippi here soon. I'm going to Dulce, New Mexico, and I'm going to go to Phoenix, Arizona, where they saw those lights. And so within an hour of me reaching Phoenix, went there before I got to Dulce, these 16 objects came over my head. And it was pretty amazing that it happened that way, especially with, the internet. If the internet's out there and that many people know you're going somewhere, a lot of people would know it. But a technology that advanced would see through the internet like a piece of clear glass. Not saying that's what happened, but it was a game changer for me, because that is why I drove 2,000 miles. And there they were. And they were very benevolent. It was very peaceful. I'll never forget it. That 4 of those were actually filmed, of those 16, by CBS News that night. And if you look at it, it was in the spring of 2013, CBS News Phoenix. They're showing 4 of the craft that are kind of doing formation changes right over the city. But I was south of Luke Air Force Base, very close to I-10, like I said. What is that? Litchfield, something right in that area. And these craft, these four that were lit that they have on cameras, as they dove down over towards, we would have been in the southwest corner of the Phoenix area. Six on each side lit up of those four, like six wingmen on the side of the four that had moved over Luke Air Force Base. Now listen, about 8 o'clock at night, it was dark. Nothing happened. Nothing, no response from Luke Air Force Base, nothing. It was like they knew better not mess with this group. One of those type deals. And my son, who happened to be stationed at Luke Air Force Base, had an apartment where we were at down near at the end of Litchfield. He said, "Those are not ours." He was standing right beside me. He said, "Those are not ours." And I knew that it was not ours because of the way they moved. The humans could not have survived the G-forces of what I saw. So I know they're real. And why that encounter, I don't know about that, but I definitely know what I saw. And again, CBS News reported 4 of the main craft that night. Let's see. Rachel, I was changed in 1980. A skywide ship took 45 minutes to pass over Mom, me, and 11 other adults in Flathead Indian Reservation. Grok said the size would account to 48 miles circumference. I don't doubt it, Rachel. Maybe like a mothership or who knows. But I think they come in all shapes and sizes. Now, I don't think any of them are alien. But the way the mainstream media and the U.S. military and the government want to present this is that the disclosure will be alien visitors. But actually, they were here before we were. So who are the aliens? But that's a narrative, and it goes back to, who was it? Reagan may have said it, Patton, or MacArthur may have said it, that one day these wars will stop when the world recognizes that there's one main enemy and the whole world comes together against that. I think they were setting this entire thing up way back then, because we hear about tales in the 1940s and all of Air Force bases in the US and encounters and all of that. Now, they can talk all they want to. I've had the encounter. It is forever embedded in my memory and etched into my mind and into my soul because of the way it went down. But guys, these large ships, I think we may have different groups. I don't think there's any lizard people. I think the Anunnaki look exactly like us, maybe a little taller. They were described as being maybe 7, 8 foot tall, blonde hair, and extremely brilliant blue eyes. And when you look at the Anunnaki statues, and you can look that up, every one of them have blue eyes. And they did that by using a crystal called the lapis lazuli. And they would form those into the eyes of all the statues of the Anunnaki group. It's amazing, and what it always makes me think of when they talk about the Nordic whites, things like that, being in that area, it's very isolated. Where would some of the group be if they're still here, which I think they are definitely still here? You got 2 groups. You got the Enlil group, the war faction, the blood sacrifice section. The ones we see on the surface now are the behind the scenes for the wars. And then you got the Inky section that's watching and trying to help the earth. But I've heard about the Greys. I've never seen any. I've heard about the reptilians, never seen any. But I think we're dealing with one race that was here long before we were, that had the technology, and they were immortal. And that means they're still here. After that flood and the fight and argument between Inky and Enlil guys, they both kind of retreated and went their own ways. But I tell you what I did see, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's see what we got here. This is Francis Palmer. In 2000, here in the UK, at about 1:30 a.m., a massive black triangle passed over my house, silent, slow, and about the size of a football pitch, 500 feet up. Francis, I don't doubt that at all. Now, I didn't have a direct encounter with a craft very similar to that, but we saw out of one of our back windows maybe 10 years or so ago, one of those craft, very silent, large. It came over, so it was moving from here. It would have been basically northwest, and it had like 3 stages of lights on the back of it. No sound, moving very slow, but it didn't have wings. More than like a big triangle, like you're saying it. Now, the next day, 2 of my neighbors that lived in that path within a few miles of me saw the same thing too. Just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just like a slow cruising giant right over the house. So I've seen those. Let's see what we got here. I'm not trying. Pink, you said exactly. The fallen angels are still on earth. They go down and all around through teleportation. If that's what they are. Now, you know, in the Sumerian text, there are no fallen angels. They were called the Apkula, and they were not evil. They were actually created by Enki. I call the Apkula Enki's 7 wingmen. But in the, like I said, going from Enoch, they talk about the fallen angels, and they talk about hell and heaven and dying, and you better be ready. But none of that is in the ancient text of Enmandu Ranki. The very people that the fallen are called now were not in any type of trouble, other than Enlil didn't like them that much, and they were used to be tagged as the evil group. But there are no fallen angels mentioned in that story of the original Book of Enoch in Enmandu Ranki. They're not there. But the way Rome and Constantine and all that group, they had to create a heaven and a hell. They had to create fear. They had to create confusion by mixing up the books, making them almost clear, but taking enough out of them where you never got the full understanding of them. Let's see what we got. Well, true. Now, Arliss Young, you said if a number of people seen them, they all may see something different. That's possible too, guys. You know, we've seen shows on TV and movies about different topics that back during the day, you would say that's really far-fetched, like Star Trek or something like that back in the old black and white days. But now that technology is here. And I mean, there's no other way to explain it other than the technology was here and it's being brought back. And I think some of the newer stuff that they're finding is actually descriptions of very older stuff. Guys, did you know that? And I think we've talked about it. And if you look through this, look at the image on the screen, the Sumerian History Channel. Look over to the far right. It says the return of the M-E. It's like me, but it's pronounced May, M-A-Y. And that was the computer system that the Sumerians used, just like we have this modern AI now. It's crazy, isn't it? But anyway, they used crystal technology. And after the flood, the crystals kind of went different ways. And Enki had some. Enlil's, most of his, ended up in the Iraqi Museum in 2003 when George Bush Jr. decided to send the army in there. And they raided that museum and they got those crystals. And they were, because they were in those crystals, they were the crystals. And let me back up. Different crystals did different things, but they all stored information, and they had basically what they were to them was a digital form of the 10 Commandments. And if you had these, you were all powerful, and they actually had those type effects, but it was crystal technology. 2003, all, I think 15,000 were taken of what they call the May tablets. And again, they were the tablets of war. That's what Bush Jr. wanted. And again, the Yankees, his were basically peaceful. But when they got those when they got those crystals in the clay tablets in the cylinders in 2003, the internet took off. That we had already started to see it form, but the technology expanded. It expanded very quickly. You went from, Windows 98 all the way up to what we have now, and now we have AI technology. But this return of the May, that video right there, talks about the ziggurats, and you see that in Iraq. They were basically power centers that controlled these crystals. And if you had one of these crystals, you were like a royal king, very powerful person, because they had some type of power. But stored in those crystals were all the commandments, not just religious or worship or anything like that. Some of it was how to build a canal system, how to build these big buildings, how to build an agricultural zone, how to grow plants, all of that. But it had an energy, just like we're seeing now, and it used a lot of resources. Finally, when that civilization started to collapse, the May collapsed and the control was lost. In other words, the people were afraid of this May. The common people, not the Anunnaki, the common people were afraid of it because it seemed to emit some type of vibration or hum or sound that was very unpleasant. You had to walk the path. And again, the priests, just like the Levitical priesthood, had 12 crystals on that Levitical breastplate that's very similar to this. And we've done a video about the power of the crystals of the Levitical priesthood before. And so that May, guys, has been regenerated now. I think what has happened is they found the crystals. All the data was stored from probably millions of years, because they can do that. And the crystals were not created by Enlil or Enki. They were collected and gathered by them, possibly from the creator of that time, which they didn't call El, they called An, A-N. But when they got them back, they had the code, they just didn't have an interface. So we saw Altman and that bunch for several years spend billions of dollars to build the interface. And what do they all say? All the fathers of AI say, we don't know what it is. We put it in there, now it's kind of taken off on its own, making loops, making decisions, finding stuff we didn't even know about. We don't know what's going on. What they did, they opened up Pandora's box again. But that's what they wanted. It's the history of man. Let's send an army, let's find the Ark, whether it's Germany, the Nazis, or whatever. We will have the most powerful weapon against our enemy. That has never changed, that search. It went all the way up to 2003 with them getting the crystals out of the Iraqi museum and bringing back to the U.S. And now we are dealing with the new ME, or the new May. But again, that particular computer program, it was like it had complete surveillance, and it was like some of the sound cannons or some of those things that the Army uses now for crowd control. You can put super low frequency in there, make you sick, whatever. That type technology was going on then, and it terrified the people. They finally rebelled against it. Many of the crystals were destroyed. The ones that weren't were put in the Iraqi museum, and you know what happened to the rest. Now, Altman and all of that bunch more than likely were part of the super elite that could go into the black market and find a lot of these crystals. But they knew the technology. Why? Because they've read these books, the ones that you and I are talking about. Their computers have analyzed this information. They wanted that Ark. They wanted that crystal technology. And now we have it back. It's going to backfire on them just like it did before. The grid's not going to be able to handle the loss of both Lake Mead and Powell coming up in less than a month. I had a report today that, guys, if you're in Los Angeles, you get a lot of power from Arizona also, but it starts way up in California. You got the northern section of the grid, central section of the grid, southern section, which is LA. But a lot of that LA power, as it's getting late in the evening, solar's going out, and you can't depend on that secondary backup. With me going out, guys, right now, today, that grid going from San Francisco to Los Angeles is under extreme pressure. One small accident, one fire coming through there and knocking out a section of that grid could knock out millions of people. And they're having to force the power that Lake Mead and Lake Powell would normally put into the grid. They're having to replace it with diesel generators, natural gas, coal, nuclear, all of those things. But they all still have to travel through the same weakened grid. And they're expecting that western grid to be the first to go, that section between San Francisco and LA. I think you got line 16 or 15 and line 26. And right now, today, they were reporting being maxed out. And they're still getting 40% from Hoover. Just imagine when that goes out. Let's see here what we got. Hey, Virginia, how are you doing? Dr. Michael Heiser studied the tablets and gives good information on them. He had a much different view. I'm sure that a lot of people do. You had a lot of people have examined them. Sitchin was one, and I don't really go along with his ideas because it's better to stay right with the tablets. That's what I've done. The other guys they can use whatever study method they want. That's up to them. I've been doing it a long time too. And all I can do is tell you what I see. Now, I'm not putting anybody else down over there, but like I said, everybody has their own opinion. Let's see. Michael George McKim. I seen the lizards 1974. Me and Dad saw a 2-mile long black triangle, more longer than wide, no sound. In Indiana and Kentucky, a French police saw it too. Okay. But like I said, that technology exists. Now, some of these craft may be man-made. The ones I saw weren't, because man could not handle the G-force I saw. And the ones flying under the ocean are not. They're not made by this group of men and women. I'm saying that they're very old. But I'm not saying that you got Area 51, all of that, test flights and things, so we don't know. But they all say and they can cruise around the triangle, all of that, the black triangles, but they can't dive into the ocean, coming in at 1,000 miles an hour, then continuing underwater at 200 miles an hour without even an impact wake. That's because of the force field. And so I think we got both. We got some man-made that are trying to re-engineer or reverse engineer some of this crap. But until you can get away from the gasoline type engines, jet fuel or whatever it is, these combustion type engines, you're never going to be there, because that's not what this group used at all. They didn't need that type of primitive engine. Let's see. Mark Gottlieb. Tiamat and Nibiru are in our close heavens now. Marco, I've seen the reports of that. I've never seen a picture of Nibiru. Tiamat goes back to ancient times. I'm not sure exactly how that works out, but the Nibiru thing is a Sitchin section of the Sumerian tablets. It's not part of the original tablets at all, though. None of that is. None of the gold going back to Nibiru to protect their skies, none of that is in the Sumerian text. The gold mining is true, but they were using it for circuit technology, just like in this video, The Return of the May. They built things, and they used a very special gold. It wasn't just regular gold, it was highly pure, the same one that Moses brought out of Egypt, that very pure gold. And Moses did the same thing. They put it on the outside of the ark. They built the threads inside the breastplates of the Levitical priesthood with that monatomic gold. So again, I've read the Sitchin books. I think I've got a few copies of the 12th Planet and things like that. And he was very good at some things. He mentioned the Pyramid Wars and all, and those are real things. But again, the Nibiru, as far as the way Sitchin described it, is not in the text. They did talk about the 36-year cycle. They talked about An coming down, and you see the inscriptions and the monuments carved of An in a flying craft, you know, the Anunnaki flying craft, all of that. But all of that, but let me say it like this, most of it relates to this planet. I'm not saying that millennia ago this group did not come from somewhere else, but they've been here a very long time. And we look at how Genesis and man was formed. The same thing happened with the Sumerians and how man was formed. You understand what I'm saying? Through the clay. It even goes back to the Hopi, formed out of clay. All of those, and it was by this particular group. If you think about Enki for a moment, his sidekick was a female genetic scientist called Ninhursag. She was the weaver. She made people out of clay, just like in the Bible. And did you know that when you talk about Spider Woman in the Hopi tradition, that her and Ninhursag are the same exact being? Like I said, one story, one history. Ninhursag was just like Enki, immortal. They traveled all over. Guys, you know why? They say that the mines they find throughout Utah in that area, and I've stared down that Jack Copper mine in Jerome, Arizona. They say that they're much older than the Spanish. The technique of the very deep mines is so sophisticated, nobody could have done that. But we understand that they mined for copper and gold. The Anunnaki did. And they had the ability to fly. How did Enlil lift off with like birds when the waves came in? They traveled from Sumer. They went to South America. You saw the civilizations develop there. They came to the desert Southwest. Ninhursag, or who they call Spider Woman, led the Hopi away from one of the floods in the very area where all the mines are, that are ancient mines. But again, that gold and that copper mining, I think, was for earthly things, not to take off planet. Mike Johnson, they just found evidence of ancient Viking stories that parallel the Bible. Guys, all of the stories come from the same origin. That's what I'm saying. They may drift off into the Hebrew narrative or the Viking narrative, and they all had the same set of gods, whether it's Zeus, Thor, all of them. It's just renaming the gods. And the gods accepted it, and they were not gods. They were Beni Elohim, sons of God, and they no longer exist. Why? Why do you never hear about them? Because they were condemned to die for screwing over the earth and the people here. And that's what happened to that. Where did they first find gold in our timeline? Right now, in going back to Samaria, they had a way to scan the ground, possibly through these crystal technologies, and possibly from craft. Oh, like an airplane can do a LiDAR scan, and they can detect minerals in underground by doing that. We can detect metal like a metal detector can and things like that, but this LiDAR will give you detailed information, and their detailed information may have been far superior to what we have. But they first found it in Africa, and there were vast gold mines and possibly other mines in the African continent. But that's where they first started mining. Let's see who we got here now. Patriot Zero. In my opinion, all the fires in the western U.S. seem to follow the flow of earthquakes down the west coast and follow the flow of seismic pressure. Now, their planet is shifting a little bit, but I see exactly what you're talking about. They do now, and what we have seen is a creep of the fires from all the way to the west coast through Arizona, New Mexico. Now, Texas has got some very large fires. It's like it's moving from west to east. And that kind of follows the heat pattern of this heat dome that's over us. Mark Gottlieb, Heiser would like to see everyone Catholic. I didn't know what religion he was or what denomination he was. Was he a Catholic? I didn't know. I've seen some videos about it, but I never tied that into that religion. Mark Gottlieb, you're talking about because I'm with the team that found our sun's binary system in 2011. The same NASA founded in 1983 and Carlos Munez Ferrada found in the 1930s, possibly. I don't know. I've never seen a picture of it. The only thing I've seen is that we have some planets that are very far out, Pluto, things like that, and they seem to have a weird orbit, like something has moved through that area. Like you say, maybe a binary twin. But in my opinion, the binary twin is Jupiter. It's a failed gas giant. Almost every solar system is a binary solar system, and in other words, two stars. Earth is a very unusual character in the sense that we say we only have one star, but Jupiter is a failed giant and it does not orbit the sun the way the rest of the planets do. And when it moves, it can change the orbit of planets. It can affect, depending on how close it comes into the sun, it can affect the asteroid belt, things like that. There's even not ancient scientific data, but data that points, and this is from scientists that ran the models, that Jupiter and Saturn, maybe a million or so years ago, was pulled closer in towards the sun. Maybe it was we were dealing with some type of grand solar maximum. I don't know. But they're saying that as it pulled in, it possibly split the fifth planet, which no longer exists. You have an asteroid belt of thousands of pieces between the fourth planet and Jupiter, called the asteroid belt. Supposedly, that was a planet that was caught up in the collision, possibly of Jupiter's moons. Think about that, how close it came, and then was pulled out back over time. And Jupiter does that. It has an 11.8 year cycle around the sun where it gets closer half of that time. The other half, it's moving back out. And that is what I say is the binary twin, as far as a Nibiru or something like that. But the data points to that did have a lot of effect on the planets. But I've never seen a picture of Nibiru. And if you've got one, I'd love to see it. Again, you can put it in the community tabs or anywhere you'd like to. I'd love to see it, as a matter of fact. In the 1980s, this critical thinking, astronomers proposed that the sun might have an extremely distant companion, possibly a faint red dwarf or brown dwarf, failed star orbiting far beyond the planets. Again, critical thinking. What they're overlooking is the million-pound elephant in the room. Jupiter is a binary twin, failed giant of the sun. And again, there's no pictures that I know of any of the other objects that people talk about. We've got, they call it Nibiru. Some call it by different names, dark star, whatever it is. But I just don't know. I have no evidence. Nemesis hypothesis. That's it. That's what I was trying to think of the name of critical thinking. Thank you. And it is that. It is a hypothesis that could have been what caused the angles off of the planet and some of the other things that we have seen and what the space agencies have seen via the satellites. But definitely there's been some type of interference for the changes that we have seen. But we just have to wait and see, I guess. I think it's Jupiter. Let's see. What would cause the crafts to smell like sulfur? Beryl, daughter of the king. Well, sulfur is caused by a couple of different things. You know, sulfur is mixed with diesel. I think it's mixed in jet fuel. Maybe that's what it is. You see what I'm saying? You gotta and right now there's kind of a shortage of jet fuel, not completely, but because of the war, and the prices have definitely jumped up. But sulfur is a part of that mixture of jet fuel, if I'm not mistaken. So that may give you an answer to that. Yes, or some people call it Planet X, but you know, what can I say? Rachel, you smell like sulfur. Well, anyway, keeps mosquitoes away. I believe it. I'll tell you why I believe it, guys, because when I was young, man, I was down in South Louisiana, down south of New Orleans. Before you get to Buras, you get to a place called Port Sulphur, Louisiana, on the Mississippi River. And back in the day, they had these giant mountains of yellow sulfur, and you could definitely smell it when you went by. But I'm not sure what they were doing with it at that time. But what you may have been smelling again was some type of jet fuel with sulfur in it. Yes, we're live, Steph. Glad to see you there. Hey, Mike, black powder power jets. Could be. Let's see what we got here. Okay, Mark, you email me where to look, and I'll dang sure take a look at it. Let's see what we got here. Rain 89, or 88, excuse me, it all evolves around the circle and the medicine wheel. Very well could be, because it's like the wheel of the Maya, the Bactun clock. That is a timekeeper. It's a time, and it goes for thousands of years. So I don't doubt that, because you had the Apache, the Mayan, the Hopi, all were kind of interconnected. There wasn't a border wall back then. And so a lot of that tradition goes hand in hand. Let's see here. 3-Eye Atlas. Hey, John. I still got those pictures that I took from the inside that coma of Atlas. And again, I guess it's on its merry way right now. Hey, one ARC, how you doing, my buddy? You still out in California? Sulfur is a sign of geological increases from racial activity, which is hand in hand raises arsenic levels in water. Very well could be. And they're starting to see that as they get lower and lower into the wells, as everything's drying up. Yakwa, yes, you're in Yakwa. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear from you, brother. I haven't seen you in a while. You're in Indiana now? Great, great. I hope you're still working on those projects you had going. Let's see what we got here. Become the fire. If Inky stayed then, let's see, is there a follow up there? If Inky stayed, then who just came through CERN? We don't know if anyone really did. It's speculation that could happen, but Inky never left. As far as we know, there's no history, nothing saying that he left. And of course, CERN's always been talked about. We've mentioned it, that people say it may be a portal. They're opening up portals. But if we look at the Democrats and the Republicans we have in place now, who needs more demons coming through a portal? One of your good friends is Postwoman over there in Gilbert. Okay. Okay, Gary. Virginia, you say it's very cool in Indiana. Virginia, were you in the part that is just now getting power back on after a few weeks? That would have been Lake County, I think, right? Very northwest corner. And you had a couple of data centers out that went out there, or they lost the grid, but they were on backup generator power. Well, critical, I don't know who is saying it's too small or what the methodology is that they're using. I'm just telling you that the sun and Jupiter orbit each other. There's a spot called the barometric center that, unlike Earth and Mars and all the other planets, we orbit around the sun from the center of the sun. Jupiter's too powerful. The sun orbits around it. They do a dance around each other. It's not from inside the sun. Look it up. Barocentric, I think is what they call that. Let's see. Stealth mode. You notice that you used to live in the 1980s. It does not look anything like it did. All brown now and a little snow in the mountains. FL Crew. Yeah, again, I'm not sure what mountains. If you're talking about the Colorado Rockies, they lost all their snow in March. Yes, photonic devices to excite our DNA, Winark. You're on our list, Jesse. By year end, I'll have several prototypes. I'll stay in touch. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Stealth. Yes, Annie. Virginia, no, I'm fortunate not to be in that area. However, I've seen many pictures of it. My sister actually saw the flooded area. I saw that video, Virginia, and during that flood, there was one of the transformer stations that looked to be at least 5 or 6 feet deep. But I think they're down to maybe this morning 3,000 or 4,000 people were all that was left out of power. I'm not sure, but I think that's what the U.S. power outage map was showing. Well, thank you. Now, your I'm going to ask go back a minute. One ARC, your photonic devices to excite our DNA. How is that going to work? Is it like an override or a bypass? Mike Johnson, we had a bedside witness. He awoke from a 3-day coma and prayed on his last day. He was comforting knowing where we are going. That's amazing stories, and we see a lot of those. You know, you never know what you're going to find out. What it does, it reminds me of the story in the secret book of James that they took out of the Bible because it was too important. The message of Christ was in there, and it definitely explained that you don't need man and a church and all that to make it. But that was one of the things that it was talking about. Let's see. Mark Godley, Tiamat was the reason for peddling the 2 moons. Tiamat has 2 cores, one the size of our moon, the other the Chinese spy balloon. Now, the Tiamat thing with, it has several names. It was like the moon. It was also like a name of a Sumerian goddess, all of those names. So it's definitely a popular name, but one the size of our moon. That's interesting because, if there was a collision, there would have been a core left, possibly, that may be the moon that we see now. Dave, you bet there'll be an earthquake on the West Coast by 9/23. Could be. That's less than a month away. Yeah, Mike, I agree with Rachel. Sorry about your dad. It does hurt. Crucial, are they shooting at the lineman there? Wow. That's pretty desperate, isn't it? Um, yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I would definitely make it a hard job. You're dodging power lines and limbs and wind and people shooting at you. Wouldn't be it fun at all. Let's see. Tiamat is from the Enema Elish. Our Earth is oceans. Its oceans and our moon are from an impact to Tiamat 4.3 billion years ago. Mark, that fits right into a lot of the stories I've read. And, we talked about planets colliding, Jupiter and Saturn being pulled in by some unknown means and then being pulled back out. And that fifth planet being turned into a debris pile we call the asteroid belt. So that could very well be part of that whole scenario because it is one history, remember. Like I was saying earlier, guys, you see all these different histories of different civilizations, but it's one history. This planet has one history with different stories that come along at different times to fit that narrative. Marjorie, I live 15 miles from the New Madrid, Missouri fault line. That was, I think, one of the largest quakes that ever happened in the U.S. Very powerful. Yeah, that's a very fascinating story, and I think that Madrid quake was even predicted by some of the native tribes, maybe Algonquin. I'm not sure. Seems like I read about that. Virginia, I heard there were oceans under our current Earth. You're exactly right. And what they're finding out now is there's vast oceans, and they are all interconnected. Some through small chambers, some through porous rock, but all of them are connected, and most of them are in deeper water that's so deep that it's not salt water. And that's amazing to think of. But again, what you're describing is what Inky call the Abzu, the deep waters, where the USO craft emerge and dive into. Mike Johnson, Psalms 19:1 was on von Brahm's tombstone. Now, I don't know how that had to do with we cannot break through the firmament, but that's something else I don't think exists. I don't think we have a flat Earth or firmament that, as many describe, like some kind of dome you can't get past. But each to his own. Let's see. Yes, massive oceans under there. And the interconnection is how these USOs can travel so fast from one continent to the other underwater. And those areas are supposedly protected still by ancient technology. You call them Lahindra grid, guys, or the Lahindra grid. There's a video in this section called the Lahindra grid, if I'm not mistaken. And it talks about the underwater systems that were put in place by the ancient Sumerians, the Enki group, that would detect any outside force entering these very deep places. They didn't want it. They didn't want it in the Antarctic either. And they took care of that problem. Arjun Taylor, about 410 to 660 kilometers, which is 410 miles down in the Mantle's transition zone. Minerals such as ring woodite can hold large amounts of water inside their crystal structure as hydroxyl OH groups. That's right. It's even shallow in some places like that, but you've got these aquifers. Some of them are gravel. It's not just a big pool of water. as the water moves through these rock formations. Again, it goes back to why Enki replenished the waters of ancient Samaria as Enlil was taking away their resources. Now we're seeing the USOs. That deep water could be used, in my opinion, looking at history, to again replenish the waters of the dying planet. Now, I don't think it will happen anytime soon. I think Atlas will finish shrugging because every time the Earth has came back and regenerated itself, it went through a massive shaking off before that happened, didn't it? Not many people made it on the ark, a handful select, and all the stories like that, just a few. And at that point, when the Atlas shrugging is done, when the people of, say the desert Southwest, you got 40 million people there that are dependent on water and electricity. And when that starts to happen, people will start to migrate. But we've got this happening all over the planet, both poles, the rivers in Europe, everywhere, the Rio Grande, the Colorado, place after place, the earth is changing. But I think those deep waters will rise. Now, let me tell you a hydraulic deal. When you got the weight of the Colorado River in the dams, say Powell and Lake Mead, when you've got, especially Lake Mead, it's the largest. You've got, if any underground springs, which there are under those river beds, are in there, they are held down and compressed by the weight of that reservoir. That's a hydrological statement. You can look it up. But as that water decreases, some of that deeper water will have the pressure taken off of it. So all of that may come into play before it's said and done, and the river will go back to its natural, what they call the run of the river, and it will sustain the seed that was left. That's what I see happening. Tammy, do I think the water is going to storage for the elites? No, no way a data center uses that much. That's exactly what they're doing, Tammy. When they go in and buy up a farm, you know, the story is they're buying the water rights, and that's exactly right. And they don't need all that water. But you know that Jared Kushner and his wife have taken over an island in the Mediterranean. Very controversial. It was a wildlife area, and they just come in, started bulldozing, bought it. But they don't have natural water on that island, which would not make sense to have to desalinate salt water out of the Mediterranean. But they're finding out, just like in the Mediterranean, in the Yemen areas, there are deep, deep oceans under all of that. And Kushner and them are drilling in from that island deep into those deep aquifers. They won't need the surface water as we see it. That's the mentality of the elite. And that kind of sucks, doesn't it, guys? Anyway, the Appalachian Mountains and everything east of the Mississippi is Atlantis. Could be. When we had the Younger Dry Ice melt collapse, guys, the oceans rose 400 feet. They didn't retreat. It wasn't a tsunami per se, but it was a 400-foot oceanic rise, and Florida was twice or three times as wide as it was now. So I don't doubt anything about how this earth has changed. But if we keep melting, you're going to see more ocean rises. Greenland's in trouble. The poles are in trouble. Let's see. The water event for Rachel, the water event for Arizona, is this the action reaction of losing our field? I don't know really how to answer that, Ray. What I see is on the water event in Arizona is just they built too many people there. I mean, too many homes and businesses. You've got hundreds of data centers now throughout the Southwest grid. I think there's, somebody look it up, maybe 800 or 900 that in the grid that I'm talking about is going to be in trouble, from North California down to LA, losing the power coming in from the east of Hoover. So we'll have to see. But again, that is that the reason you're losing your field? Rachel, where are you at? Because you may be talking about farmers are complaining that the data centers or other people are draining their wells and their ponds, but I'm not sure that's what you're talking about. Beryl, what about the Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, where there are ancient pillars underneath the water? That would have been exactly during the time of the Younger Dryas ice melt, because that's where the big ice sheets were. That's where that melt flow occurred. That's what led the mud all the way through the mountains and created the mesas of Utah. And listen, everyone here has heard about the Bermuda Triangle, right? And how it will interfere with GPS and throw things out of whack for planes or ships. You know, they may go into some kind of time warp. They definitely lose all GPS and things like that. All, compass and all of that's lost. But that area was 400 feet shallower before that melt. And Bermuda was one of the largest Atlantic volcano mountains that existed. And more than likely, there was civilizations there. And more than likely, what we're seeing is some type of active network that's maybe 400 feet deep in that area, maybe deeper, because we do have submarine bases there, that's ancient, that's emitting a signal, possibly 1.6 gigahertz, that's throwing everybody off. And this has been going on, at least 100 years or so that we know of. But the older ships talked about having problems around the Bermuda Triangle. But that signal at 1.6 that's coming from there uniquely matches the GPS interference signal of Skinwalker Ranch. Whether or not it's connected or not, but the Skinwalker 1.6 does the same thing. Knocks the drones out, throws GPS off, knocks the rockets out of the way, all of those things like that. And that's ancient technology buried in that mesa. Same thing could have happened in the Atlantis situation. And that would explain why you have the Bermuda Triangle and the effects that it has, simple GPS interference. Tammy and Mary talking about the ears ringing. I was reading something about that. And they say as you get older, it's worse, things like that. But it also that it is a frequency from inside you, not external, that's trying to block outside frequencies. That sounds strange, doesn't it? But that's what I was reading, that pitch is trying to override, say, EMF fields and things like that. And if I remember a few years back, we had a tornado something here. Power was out overnight. And so there was no electricity. I had a couple of battery fans and we were just chilling, the windows open, fans blowing. And that pitch left, that high frequency pitch. But what I'm finding out is the pitch is not from the EMF. It's in response to it, and it's a natural frequency the body is using to try to block that outside interference. We'll take it for a grain of sand, but it does kind of make sense. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, Arjuna Taylor, is that Arjuna? Arjuna Taylor. That Arjuna name is an ancient name from India, by the way. Marjorie Daler, you're right. It's going to be tricky, folks, with real estate since a water shortage. Guys, the banks are going to collapse because of it. They're going to turn in the keys in Vegas because you don't have any water or electricity. They can't sell it. They can't live in it. The banks are going to have to take the loss, but the banks are the ones that pushed the people to come in and double the actual estimate of the house so that it doubled your insurance, it doubled everything. But that moment that happens, guys, the people, they're going to say, well, people are not going to walk away from their homes in Vegas. Guys, you think they're going to care about their credit score when there's no water to drink and no electricity? They're going to hand that into the banks and tell them good luck with it and thank you for overappraising our house and causing all these problems to begin with. But that is going to be a major collapse, and it's going to go down with what we're looking at. The data centers are overexposed financially. I was reading about it today. The banks are in trouble. NVIDIA is having to loan money to companies that buy its chips because the moment, and they're broke, they're all broke, but the moment that people and these smaller companies stop buying NVIDIA chips, the whole thing collapses. So they're forced into a situation to loan, like you come to NVIDIA, we need 1,000 chips, even though they're 50 grand a piece. And, but the banks won't lend it. The obvious reason is the market is overexposed and not one AI company has reported profit. But NVIDIA said, oh crap, this is going to blow us out of the water. So we better pump up money to give to them to kick the can down the road just a little further. And that's exactly what they're doing. Hertzman, Minyard, do you think the eclipse next week will cause a big earthquake in California or something? It has effects on the planet, or we wouldn't have high and low tides and king tides with full moon. So, and your body's made up of water too. But as far as an earthquake, it could, because if you shift enough oceanic water, you're shifting a tremendous amount of weight throughout a tectonic plate system. But I can't say for sure. The way that I know when an earthquake's coming most of the time is a huge solar flare. But there's definitely earthly effects of caused by the moon and the gravity of the moon. And it controls the tide. So that's a pretty big piece of energy, isn't it? Now, Tammy, I don't know about the dealership still having the chip crisis at all. I haven't heard much about it, but I do know it was a real thing back just a few years ago for diesel trucks, tractors, just about any cars, trucks, whatever it was. I haven't heard much about that, but what I have seen about new cars and trucks is that nobody's buying them. The ones that bought them are getting repoed. In other words, just look at there's videos on YouTube, or you can look at CNBC. Right now, thank you, Juna Taylor, very much. We appreciate it. But when we look at that situation, I haven't heard anything about a new chip shortage. Again, the banks are having to take the cars back. They can't even sell the used cars. Even if you can get a good price on a used car, they won't finance it, but they will loan you $100 grand to buy a pickup. But they know you'll never be able to pay for it. And some of these vehicles have been sitting on the lot for 3 years. Same with the housing industry, cars, all of that. Private credit is collapsing, guys. There's a big reset financially coming to this planet. We just saw Bensett, Trump's man, coming in and reprice out the bonds and said, we're going to clean up everything with this bond increase. It lasted less than 24 hours. And we were back in the hole, owing a lot more money than we started with. We got some pretty smooth characters running things. Virginia, your sister's car quit running. She had to, last week, had to pay $1,000 for a chip to fix it. That's crazy, isn't it? Man, it makes me really love my 79 F-150 old rusty pickup. No chips. No, nothing but spark plugs and your points, things like that. I love that. I can actually work on it, but and I wouldn't trade anything for that old truck. I guarantee you couldn't give me a new car or truck and the way they make them now for that 79 old rusty pickup. Stormy, you're not worried about it. Has any guys, did you see a report today? You know that the cattle industry and the beef industry has collapsed, and I think 3 plants have shut down or something like that. Tyson, big protest about all of that. But there's a report out this morning that, it came out of the initial report's been a couple of days old, but that Trump was going to import beef to make up for this beef shortage here, maybe from Mexico. Has anybody heard that? All right. Now listen, what they're finding out in that meat, guys, it's not beef. It's the wild mustangs that they're killing and butchering it in Mexico and calling it beef and shipping it over here. Horses. Pretty sad for someone like me that doesn't hunt and kill. I've been a vegetarian over 50 years now. But yeah, Mustang meat is what they're calling the Trump imported beef. Yeah, it is a good truck. Thank you. Uh, the Tammy, you can look on YouTube about Mustang meat, and there's a couple of guys out there that have been doing this a long time that are pretty well known and seem to be reliable that are talking about that. Yeah, I love horses too. Yeah, Annie B, that's what they're saying. Wild Mustang meat is what they're going to import to replace the beef. Florida raises stealth mode. Florida raises cows, sheep, and pigs. Is that right? There are a few cattle being raised now. Yeah, in the smaller ones, but these big, like the Tyson Industries and things like that. I think it started with you had the drought. We didn't have the cattle feed to feed them. What we were getting, we were sending it to China. All of this, but then they didn't. They couldn't feed them, so they had to sell the cattle off. Created a shortage, and now you see the Tyson plants closing. All having to do with the data centers depleting the very rivers that the farmers need. Yep. Um, just the local stores here, from the people that I hear about that do eat meat, guys, it's very poor grade, very high price, very poor grade. And has anyone else noticed that the vegetables, the fruit, and everything are terrible? Or it may just be here in our area of central Mississippi. But they're double, triple the price, and they seem to be old or they were frozen before they were put out. They're just not lasting, but maybe just us. Mike Johnson, they removed the FDA requirement of origination of origin labels. Yep. Jimmy Dore, Mary White said, Jimmy Dore said Japan refused to load due to toxic antibiotics used. Wonder if that's the beef we're getting. I don't know, but I have read that the U.S. is one of the few nations that allow this type of crap to go on with their food. We'll accept anything when many nations won't even buy our exports. So it's part of the depopulation agenda, get everybody unhealthy. Yet throwing watermelons out after we cut it. That's exactly what we're seeing, guys. And we had a couple of tomato plants this year. I don't garden like I used to. I'm getting old. And they came out for a while in the spring, a few good tomatoes, and then just gone. And that's happened the last few years. Kind of makes you discouraged. I think it's got to do with the sun, the changing. But good evening, Captain Trips. But definitely, it's like our food sources and things are being depleted. All the resources humanity needs is being taken away. We have more chemicals in our food than food. You're exactly right. Exactly right. And we don't know what we're getting. Yep, Oscar, right. You're exactly raise your own vegetables. Now you got to have water. You got to have a good place to do it, fertilizer and things like that. And I've done it many times. Just the last few years with the heat of the summers, it's been pretty rough. Not just on me, but a lot of people. Critical thinking. Argentina is very energy rich with pristine glaciers and low population that is very poor. That's right. You know, there was a lot of UFO activity in that area also. Umbra Group. Aliens eat horses. I don't know if they do or not. I don't know. They may be vegetarians. You never know. Uh, the tomatoes aren't that great tasting. Some here regarding same here. Yeah, Oscar, you're right. Rest in peace, Dolly Parton. 80 years old. Tomatoes won't ripen. Again, I think it has to do with the sun changing, the heat and everything, the radiation coming into our planet, the solar storms, things like that have definitely affected the ability for the crops to live very long, it seems like. Yeah, you're right. On the sky, they don't taste the same. Food, and I hear a lot of people say that just don't taste the same anymore. And them lifting a lot of restrictions like the labeling and all really makes it that much worse. But and what we all have to realize is we're not part of the equation anymore. What you're seeing, what they're giving for food, things like that, it's just something to get you by on till you can be disposed of easily, and the elites can go into their water hoarded hideouts. But you're not going to be able to run and hide from what's coming. You can't, not at the bottom of the ocean or the highest section of heaven will you be able to escape it. Remember, Revelation said, I will destroy those that destroy the world or destroy the earth. A lot of people in this tech industry are not listening to that, are they? Yeah, Arjun, that's exactly what's going to happen. Any type of person that wants to be propped up as a king or prince, that's what they fear the most is an uprising, usually because they mistreated people. Fly fishing, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Nothing is the same. Inman is saying people aren't the same anymore. Family isn't the same. Everything is backwards. You know, it makes me wonder how much technology had to do with that. You know, kids all had games. Everybody's got their face in a cell phone now, all the time. It's amazing whether it's you see them walking down the street or in a vehicle or school or at work. It's just they turn inward. And when you do that, you kind of lose the contact with the outside world. Not sure if that's what it is, but maybe that is exactly what it is technology. Mike, what kind of deposit is that in Nevada? No, Rachel, I've not heard about that. That's very interesting, though. You're not hungry. Come on, get you a Mustang burger, Virginia. It's pretty gross, isn't it? Want to go back to the 70s. You know, that was when I was in high school, and in late 70s, it was in college, and it was the best years of my life. Now I look back on it and think, I don't know how I survived it. Yeah, you can bypass technology by talking to people directly. and the ones that can still talk and carry on the conversation. But they've been, I'm old school, OG, and I got a cell phone. I don't carry it with me. I'll leave it in my truck 3 or 4 days before somebody calls my wife and asks, "Is Jesse still alive?" I kept been trying to call him, and I think, well, my phone has been in the truck for 4 or 5. I just don't keep up with it. I don't put it on the internet or Wi-Fi or anything else like that. I just use it for emergency contact. I have my PCs here in the studio, but also I have radiation meters and EMF meters that show how dangerous these cell phones are, especially if you put them in your pocket, shirt pocket, and it's that close to your heart, it can kill you. Let's see, in my life, 1971 to now, population has doubled. Wildlife used to make up 70 to 80% of the biomass on Earth. Now it's less than 5%. I've seen salmon runs most of my young life you could walk across, all gone. That's right. There are not too many OG schools left of us left, huh, Steph? That's true. Only the good die young. Us old ones, we just hang around. That's elk herds in the many hundreds. Yep. The buffalo were like that by the millions. Rachel, what is causing the resonant events like Miami Mail or the others that are happening in the desert? And could they one day not fluctuate and stay open longer? What are you talking about, Rachel, on that? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yeah, they are. All the herds are down. 77, huh, Annie B? Yep. I graduated 73 of high school. That's telling you I'm pretty old. But that's your body, and maybe not your mind telling you that. But someone did say something funny the other night. I don't remember who it was. We were talking about sleep and dreams. You remember that video? But someone said, we were talking about tossing and turning, waking up at 3 a.m. And one of you guys says, I don't toss and turn. That's all I do is toss and turn. I'm like a chicken on a rotisserie. I got bones hurt on every angle. And I believe that 100%. I don't remember who said it. It was funny, but it's exactly true. You toss and turn all night when you get old, your bones get sore, and you've lived through quite a few accidents and rough and scuff, things like that. Graduating 75. There you go. Billy G, how you doing? Mama Bear, you raised buffalo on our ranch in the foothills of the Appalachians up here in western New York, New York. There you go. You can't hardly find buffalo anymore. Even it used to be in the grocery stores and you could buy all various cuts. You can barely even find a random package. I'm not sure, is it a protected park species now? I'm not sure about that. Rachel, I don't know. That makes sense, though. Famous X points. Understand Russia and U.S. are studying them, and David Lewis Anderson is using them for time travel. Could be like portals. Could be. Rotisserie bird here, too, every 5 minutes. I know the feeling, guys. Yes. And as soon as I get comfortable, one of the hussies going to jump on the bed and wake me right back up every time. Anna, are you saying the sound is out here in the studio? Let me know if we're 5-5. No audio. Okay, guys. Let's see what we got. Oh, you hear me? Okay. Wasn't sure. I could hear in the studio. I didn't know what you guys were hearing. It's good. 5x5. Thank you, Steph. You're good. Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Well, listen, guys, throw me some questions. We got a few more minutes. I'm going to try to run to 10. Give us a couple of hours to do this. Small echo, Snowden. Let me see what I can do a little bit about that. Is that any different? Maybe. Anyway. Thank you, Critical. Sounds fine. Sounds good. Okay, well, as long as we can get the message over. Heard a high school degree in 72 is equivalent to a 2-year degree associate now. Yeah, I've seen reports where the people in the 12th grade can't read and write now. That's pretty rough, isn't it? Yeah, what happened to the buffalo meat? I don't know. Well, you can go get you some Mustang meat now. Loud and clear. Go. Good. Thanks, guys. Yep, those were the good old days. I still have no sound, Marjorie. I'm sorry. You may have to check your side or refresh your page if everyone else is hearing me. But try refreshing or something like that. Okay, well, it may be going in and out. I'm not sure. I would not doubt it because I'm not the most technical person you ever met. Day for life. If Christ returns, what would happen? What do you think? What do you think would happen? Now, it's very strange that there is a type of Christ that was mentioned in the Sumerian text that led to Melchizedek. Then Melchizedek led to Christ. Very interesting there because Christ told him, he said, I am before Abraham was. And that was Melchizedek. Both are very similar. But in the Sumerian text, when they talk about Christ, he returned. It was after 550 days after the crucifixion. And he returned and he talked to Thomas and he talked to James in the secret book of James, things like that. And that was the return according to them. But he had cleared the way. He had cleared the crap out of the way for us to go directly through him to our Father. But in many ways, Christ being Emmanuel, which means God with us. You don't know how close those two were, but it does not talk about another return, but that he had cleared the way, he had made the path, and only if you follow him can you make it. That's what it says in that part of it. But again, there was a lot changed by the Romans and the Jewish scribes. Yep, Mike, I never knew you. And that is because, people don't believe, and it could be even a little bit deeper than that, because there were certain races that were different. And that may tie into exactly what you're talking about there. And even into the story of Cain. Right. It is a spiritual way. In other words, Christ, again, he said, I've come up to set you free. I'm showing you the way. And here it is. And what he told James in that secret book is very fascinating, guys. And some of the other information in the Sumerian text about this group is very interesting at all, especially the story about, remember when Jesus went up on the mountain and he told a couple of disciples, now y'all stay in right here. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to pray, and don't fall asleep. You pay attention. I want you to see what happens. And they said, they saw it was like a light, and they saw like a Someone like Moses or Elijah was there with him. That's a very, very interesting story in the very original text about who Christ really was. And he was showing them certain things, even parts of who he was spiritually. Very interesting. And he had just left the base of the mountain at the gates of hell, telling them that no longer is this going to work. I'm going to seal these gates. I will preach. I will send my disciple to this very area. And we're talking about Mount Hermon, where the fallen supposedly fell. Yeah, the King James Bible has been tampered with big time. All of them have. Any of the Bibles that are using the Roman and Hebrew stories are completely off from the true narrative. I'm just saying right now, you've got there, you go to the original text, you come another 100, 200 years, you got a different change. Another 1,000 years, you got a different change. And you get it into a group of people to where their God has to be the supreme God so they can rule the whole world and call even the U.S. military into that area to fight their wars. Then there's problems with that. And that's what we're seeing, guys. But you had a couple of different group of people. In the Sumerians, they had what we'll call the black-headed people. They were the ones that they actually made slaves and miners. And that was a group. In the Old Testament, that was the 6-day creation. And people don't understand how that works. But you've all read probably a day with the Lord is 1,000 years. But on the 6th day, it says he made man. And that was Adam, the man. 7th day, that 1,000-year period, God rested. Then on the next day, the 8th day, which is not mentioned, he looked around, he decided he needed another man to take care of the animals and stuff. And that was called Adam. So Adam was the creation that, again, of the slave race. And the trouble in the garden was that Enki enlightened mankind and created the 8th-day creation. Even the really good Hebrew scholars will tell you about the 8th-day creation. Even one of my great teacher friends, Pastor Arnold Murray, talked about Adam and Ahadam. And there's 2 different groups, still is. But the story about Cain is amazing because if you have to understand what had happened. They made out Cain to be evil, but he was the child of Enki, and he was enlightened because Enki did the enlightenment deed, if you understand how that works. And so Enlil couldn't stand that. He walked in the garden. He tried to throw everybody out, and he cursed them. And they said that Cain had a mark on him, and no one could touch him, wouldn't want to touch him. But the mark, guys, was that he looked like Enki. He didn't look like the regular men. They knew that he was special. And the reason that the way the Genesis plays it out, his blood, he did not offer a blood sacrifice. And his offering of fruit and vegetables was turned down because Enlil, who was in the Yahweh type, he wanted the blood sacrifices. He was the god of war. But Cain was supposedly the bad guy. So was Enki. He was called the serpent. But it was only because he allowed them to eat the tree of enlightenment. And Enki did not want his slaves to be awake. But anyway, so Cain, if you read on about it, he was not a dirt poor farmer that was cast into the desert to die. He built the very first cities of that entire region. He was a great architect. He had the DNA of the Anunnaki. He also had crystal blue eyes. And that was the mark of the Anunnaki into this species. That's why they said, do not touch him. Anybody that touches him will die. He was very special. He was not someone evil that the Romans and the Hebrews wanted to classify him as. He was not. And we're getting deep into the original scripture right now. It may sound completely different. Many of you know what I'm talking about, though. And that I'm glad of that because, again, we've got to go to the beginning. And then you got to shake off all the dust of the different translations and the different political and religious schemes that were applied. John, what do you think about the Bible describing biology being cast out of the Father into the world, being redeemed and resurrected, sperm cell getting an egg? Uh, I don't know how to answer that, John. The the creation is pretty much the way they say it was. Now, but again, you had two types of creation. You had the original slave race. Then you had the day of rest, the eighth day creation come in, Ahadam. And it was nothing magic. The eating of the tree, the enlightenment of the tree of knowledge was a sexual act. That's what happened to Eve. And it was Eve and Enki. And Enki was declared the serpent. And that's why you still see that entwined serpent on the doctor's offices and the chiropractor's office because it was a sign of healing. But the Hebrews had to change that in the Romans into making this group look evil because they would lose control any other way. They had to make up a hell and a heaven to keep you in fear. Yeah, my fishing, you're right. Anyway, guys, we are at 10 o'clock right now. If you let me know if you got any more questions. It's been close to a couple hours, not quite. Yes, Virginia, they did. They flipped it exactly right. And it all has to do with they wanted their supposed God to be the world God. And he happened to be one of the 70 that had his immortality stripped out. Yet, Arjun, that's very interesting because she's saying that I watched a video about the 5 Mile Library of the Vatican. One can only imagine what books are there. You know what worries me about that is the AI data centers are buying up the large libraries now for a very good price so that they can cut the binders, do a fast digital scan, and burn the books. And I wonder if the Vatican is going to do the same thing, sell them those books. Because the whole reason the Vatican Library is there is to hide the truth, just like the Smithsonian. Hey, Lori, thank you. You're very welcome. Yeah, you don't know what books they are destroying, but they have one section, and I think it's all the books written before AI are more valuable than the ones that have been written since AI to the AI data centers because they're not AI slop. They wanted real human authors, real human stories. And so those books are much more valuable before AI than they are the ones are now. Yeah, it is horrible that they are burning ancient books. Yeah, they again turned everything backwards, Dave, and that's really what this last few years of my channel has been about is to say, wait a minute, guys, they changed this. Let's get back to the original, read it the best we can, and then when your eyes are open, you can't go back, guys. If you ever get that deep into it, you can forget it because once you know, you know. Yep. Well, Mike, I understand because I do the same thing. I can talk about this stuff for days, but I may do 2 or 3 hours of study a day on newer topics or diving just a little deeper. It's just because I want to know. Thank you, Roma. I appreciate it. Well, guys, let's see. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna let you go. We've been here a couple of hours now. Are we in the little season? Um, Gray, it's so hard to say because what's happening is we're colliding two different stories together: Old Testament, New Testament, and Sumerians, and the way they handled it. So it's almost and it was designed to be confusion. It was designed to be a Babylon situation. That's why they took so many books out and made it confusing, so you could not understand it. And that's what really ticks them off when people like you and I show them that we actually know more than they do, and that their lives are not working anymore, and that we do understand the path. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Well, I do try to get it right. I don't do it all the time, make mistakes, but I try to make sure that I'm at least attempting to get the best information out. I think it's important, and it's something that I would not want to be caught lying about or misleading someone about when we're dealing with this. But it seems controversial because I would sure slap some people in the face when you say certain things like Yahweh and Paul and really what went on there throws them off. But there's so many now that are coming back and realizing we've been lied to. And the truth makes more sense than all the lies combined. No, therefore, Anu would not be Elohim. Elo means sons. And Elohim is sons of God. It's not the sons of men like they tried to change. That was one of the changes. Original text, the Elohim were the sons of God. They were called up to that council. And it says that the Elohim sat in that council and were condemned to immortality by An, or El in the Hebrew, but by the head God. And the witnesses there, which would have been Enoch, and in the Sumerian case, Enmanduranki, or Enmanduranki, they would have been the ones. Here's where the confusion comes in. Because in that verse where it says, the Beni Elohim, the sons of God, were there at the table, and God, well, he was mad because they had went in and declared themselves gods and ruined everything, started wars and everything else. The mainstream tries to say, then someone that Yahweh was told to stand up and take command because all the other gods had made a mistake. You take it, Yahweh, and you run it. That's nothing like what happened. And it doesn't say Yahweh's name there at all. What it was whatever scribe, where you want to call him Enki, Enoch, who was taken up to this heavenly place, to the council of the gods, same way with Enmanduranki, both seventh sons. They were taken up and they witnessed that. And they are the ones, or that person was the one that says, stand up. He was talking to Elyon. You take back control. It was not what the Jews want you to think, that Yahweh was told that he was better than all the other gods. He had messed up just like they did. And as a matter of fact, he was a lesser one of the brothers. And in that time, they thought Israel was pretty much the last portion. And, 69 brothers like Baal and all that, there's no question that there was a lot of confusion and a lot of nonsense. But God had told his 70 kids, don't go down there and mess this place up. Watch it, take care of it. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. They had to ruin everything. That's why the temple was empty when Christ rent that veil, because they had already all been condemned to mortal lives. And they were told right there in the Old Testament, you will die like man, you will die like the kings because of what you've done. It's not Yahweh. Yahweh was one of the condemned ones. And that temple was as empty as empty box when Christ rent that veil. He did it to show him, your God has been gone a long time. So stop this nonsense. I'm here to tell you. And he said on the cross, Eli, 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 Shabbatane, speaking about El Elyon. He was teaching from the Christ in Psalms. And, you know, one of the biggest things you can do to jerk a rug out from somebody is say, Yahweh is dead, or Paul was a liar. But I'm not going to lie to you. And I could know it, keep it to myself, and never tell anybody because I don't want to get abused or darts thrown at me. But that's not my job. Once you know, you know. And if you know you cannot put that candle under a bushel basket, that knowledge will be taken away from you. And so it's like if you were just having a discussion with your friend and they really didn't know anything about what you were talking about, and you said, well, I've been studying, found out that Paul was a Roman rhino, a traitor, and Yahweh was taken out with the 69 brothers. And then they say, well, what? And you'd say, and then you say, well, how could you go into a church and tell them that? In today's modern church, could you walk up there and stand at the pulpit and tell them those words, that the God that they had been believed in does not exist, that it is up to Jesus and our Father in heaven? And, you know, they say, no way, I'd get stoned to death. I'd get run out of town, whatever. And that's true. At least you can't throw a rock through the screen at me, guys. Excuse me. But that's the situation. And so you cannot be a coward to teach the truth. You have to be able to take it. But when you do, when you get through that, and you say, well, I know something, but I know I'm going to catch hell if I say it. But when you finally do, it's a big burden off of you. That pressure to tell people is lighter. And when you guys come in and say things like, it makes sense, and yes, I've heard about this, and I've read that, that's beautiful to me because, you know, the more people know, the more they can tell other people. And not everybody's going to believe you, but the elect will, the remnant and the seed, they will understand, and they probably already do. And you guys that understand, it's because that seed was planted a long time ago. Now it's getting watered and fertilized, and it's from the word. So if you get in that situation, you know, you want to think it out to where you got to stand up before the synagogue, like it's talked about in the Bible. Then make sure you got your P's and Q's right, and then do it. If we don't, who is? You know, Christ sent out, 72 disciples, and they went to the 70 locations that were appointed to the 70 sons of God. And Christ said, and they came back, when those 72 came back, they said, they were joyous. They said, we threw out demons in your name. We healed people in your name. And Christ looked at them and said, I saw Satan fall. Because they went into those domains where these 70 gods had claimed to be gods, and they preached the truth of Jesus Christ. And he did see Satan fall because they took the illusion away from the people at that time. But over these few thousand years, that illusion has grown very dark and very strong again. But people like you and I, we're burning through that darkness. And again, going to the source is the only way to do it. No matter what you've been told, no matter what some church leaders told you your whole life, you find out for yourself the truth. There's a lot in these videos that you're looking at right here, but they only touch on it. There's so much more. And it's really difficult to try to put it all together. But I just felt like tonight would be a good time that we could get together and talk. Again, I'm going to let you guys go. Also, Mary Magdalene, thank you. Eddie, Christ loved the women. Paul told them, shut up and go home and let your husband tell you. That's called instead of Christ. And that's why it's amazing to me a church or a preacher on TV talk about Paul more than they do Christ, and they call themselves Christians. Why not talk about Christ? I don't know why. They just kind of look at you crazy. But that's because of the indoctrination, and some of these people are evil. They have an alternative or ulterior motive, let's put it that way. Yeah, he walked in there and he overthrew the tables of the money changers, broke out that whip, and that's what we're about to see now. These table of the money changers overturned again. The banks are in trouble. AI is overbought. The data centers are in trouble. You know, guys, I mentioned they're already having to repo some of the data center chips from people that came in, borrowed a bunch of money, and couldn't pay it back. So their data centers are getting repoed. That's a sign of collapse. And the quicker, the better. If those damn data centers can collapse, it will balance out the water and the grids. But we're just going to have to see how it happens. I don't think there's enough time to do a lot of changes right now. They talk about the Bureau of Reclamation with their plans going out into late 27, 28, and we got a month or so left with Lake Powell and Lake Mead losing hydro and water. So those plans, again, are long-term, but you watch this channel, and there's a lot of channels now that cover Mead and Powell. And there's just not enough water or snow this year to change it around. I read that it would take like 3 times, if you had a record snow this winter, it would take that happening for 3 years in a row to have any effect at all. We'll see. But I think, again, we saw the 13,000-year cycle change on December 21st, 2012. And we are now into that 14th cycle, guys. And it's a cycle of change. It wasn't an ending, wasn't an apocalyptic ending at 2012. It was just the changing of the clock dials and the timing, the precession of 26,000 years, which, by the way, does put that 23,000 new timeline of the Great Pyramid in perfect synchrony with all of the things we're talking about. I knew it was much older than that. You had to be. You know, 5,000 or 6,000 years ago is a blink of time compared to the history we're talking about. Anyway, guys, we're out of here. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for putting up with me this long. I guess I had a lot to say, but I wanted to connect with you guys. But we're watching it. I'll see you tomorrow. Try to get some videos up. Depends on what's happening. We're watching 2 or 3 different events right now. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe. Stephen, I will do just that. And again, these tablets, there's maybe several hours of videos on the Sumerian History channel. Just go in and type it. It's right there. Or if you go to BP Earthwatch, you'll see right under the first lines of the videos on the BP Earthwatch channel, this logo. And that logo is Inky sitting in one of his USOs, if you look at it closely. Anyway, go there and you can get quite a bit of information from these videos. Some are an hour or 2 long, and it took a lot of detail and effort to get them into that point. But go there and check them out. And I'm not going to stop until my last breath comes. And at my age, you never know when that is. But as long as the powers that be want me to stay here and talk, that's what we're going to do. Thank you, guys. See you in the AM.